I'm part of two industries. I'm part of the cannabis industry and the restaurant industry. And in the restaurant industry, there's a million restaurants. But the degree of separation is like three.
Yeah.
And the cannabis industry, it's probably like one or two.
It's like one. Yeah.
You know?
It's nuts. It is. But that's the beauty of this opportunity right now is to go out there and to befriend a bunch of different people, not just through Grow Club and other events like that, but just being active on LinkedIn. I have some friends that are also buddists who've built their career just doing product reviews.
Welcome to the KayaCast, the podcast for cannabis businesses looking to launch, grow, and scale their operations.
Jake, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me. Honored to be here.
I don't know if I've talked to anybody that has more breadth of experience in the cannabis industry than you.
Yeah, I'd say when it comes to how many different hats I've worn in the industry, I think I am kind of on an island by myself. But certainly, I mean, I got to pay my deference to all those who've come before and built, of course, this big, beautiful legacy industry. The growers, every operator who's been at it for decades. But I am, definitely somebody who's learned a little bit about a lot of different things.
So tell me, what led you to helping home growers?
Sure. For me, I think home grow is just an inherent human right. If this is such a beautiful plant and the way it's able to help people, with mental health struggles or, even just socializing, to me, it's just the pure essence of the cannabis industry. It's immune from all the drama of regulatory changes or infighting between brands. And, it's just the true essence of what makes cannabis special. It's the personal relationship between the individual and the plant. So,
yeah, it's funny when you say that because I have a friend that grows at home, and every time he has a batch, he gives me his batch. And
it's a good friend.
Really good friend. And the fact that I know that it's homegrown, that it's grown outside, it's, with the rhythm of sunlight and all those things, I feel, even though I didn't grow it and I consume it, there's something magical there.
It's true. I think there's always kind of an extra specialness to anything where, you put your hands in the soil, you help grow it yourself, or your friend did as well. I mean, it's like raising a kid, I mean, every one of them is going to be different. You're going to screw up along the way, but ultimately the screw ups are what makes it special.
Yeah.
You put in the work, you get something beautiful out of it.
So if I was at home and I'm a consumer and I'm thinking to myself, I want to grow at home, but man, that looks hard.
Yeah.
Where do I start? What do I do?
That's why ILGM brought me in to really start this whole Grow Club push after doing our road show, which was basically a series of home grower workshops that went from California to New York at the start of last year. There was just such a positive response to it that it just became really apparent that there's a huge gap, in all of the genetics companies, all of the breeders, all of the marketplaces. They're focusing on solving one problem. Hey, here's a great collection of seeds. But who's taking the extra step to say, how do we keep this hobby sticky? How do we make sure that somebody's not going to try this once, have a poor experience because they spend way too much time, way too much money on something that ends up being inferior to what they would just buy anyways? We got to make sure that this is fun. I mean, personally, I think where Grow Club is so powerful is, the addition of these experts. Locals, our New York local leaders, Danny Danko, we got Jungle K in Chicago, we got Christina Wong here in LA. I mean, they all come from different backgrounds in home grow. They team up with, people who just attend the event. A lot of our mentors, a lot of people from our forum, which has been around since 2012, love coming to these events because this is a place where, you can have conversations you don't have anywhere else. You get to actually hold the hand of people that are trying to learn this hobby, teach them tips and tricks. And of course, a lot of people at these events are expert level or intermediate level, and they want to have a completely different conversation. So I think that's the kind of the what makes this so powerful. Of course, is having that guiding hand, making sure that even if you're not at the event, you can meet somebody that you can call and say, hey, look, is this powdered mildew? Are these spider mites? I have the benefit of my cousin-in-law lives up in Humboldt. You know, he's been up there since he's been 18. He's worked for a lot of big operators. When I'm home growing, I'm often giving him a quick call and being like, what am I screwing up? You know, with Grow Club, now everybody has that cousin in Humboldt, you know, to help them troubleshoot. So, you know, that's my mission here. That's ILGM's mission. If we can just keep people excited about home grow and more importantly, kind of lighting that fire to get them to want to teach others, I think we're doing something right, something good for the industry and something good for humanity. So
Yeah. Wow. So I had no idea. It's a club that you join.
yeah, more or less. You know, I think it's a series of events. You know, we try to do two per location per quarter. We are in some markets like Virginia. We do them pretty much every single month. You know, so smaller venues versus, you know, larger. Sometimes you can just pack it a little bit more. But the beauty of this is we also have our online grow club as well. So if you're, you know, between meetings, you know, you can log on every single week, talk to some people who put their plants in the ground at the same time, have those experts there, you know, kind of holding your hand throughout the process. And of course, I mean, you know, there's just, by having that mentor network, by having the forum, I mean, even if you're in crisis mode, there's somebody there to bail you out. And what I always tell people who come to my events are like, hey, like if you grow these and you screw it up for whatever reason, just give me a call. I'll send you more seeds. Yeah, I want this to be fun for you. I don't want this to be, you know, a pain. And every local leader has that same power. They have an allocation of seeds. We just want to make sure that, you know, it's not about just sitting here and trying to drive sales. It's let's give the people what they're looking for here, a way to feel comfortable, a way to make new friends, especially after COVID. You know, I feel like, you know, you just don't find retail locations, consumption lounges, throwing events that are education focused anymore. You know, back in the earliest days, like, you know, right in California where things started switching over to rec, you had acupuncture workshops, meetups, medical patients and stuff loved going to these things. But over the years, they just became, you know, events became nothing but new product drop. Yeah. You know, hey, we're dropping our new fire, get in line. And unfortunately, same people at all those events already have their own cliques of friends. It's really intimidating, you know, if you're not comfortable in this scene, just walking in there and trying to navigate it. But with our events, it's like, hey, everybody is just kind of on the same playing field. There is no place for clicking up and not talking to people. We want you to be making friends. We don't want to just sit here and talk at you about home grow. We want you to talk amongst each other. We want to have just back and forths, egoless, just having people sharing tips and tricks, being vulnerable about what they're afraid. I'm gonna screw this up. I don't know about pH fault. I don't know any of this stuff. You know, that's the beauty of this though, is making people feel comfortable again around something that can be so damn intimidating.
I love the mission, and for me, maybe this isn't your mission, but I know that you guys are achieving this is opening up the door and giving people the opportunity to have a special relationship with the plant. Yeah. Because how the plant is grown, my wife's family, they're in the growing, you know, business, right?
Very cool.
And I talked to my father-in-law about how the plant's grown, and he just gave me this in-depth overview of the plant itself and how magical it is. And it's like magic. It's not like growing tomatoes, for example, you know? It's so different. And I'm like, this is like Avatar shit. Like, do the normal consumer know about how magical this plant is?
They do once they start seeing this stuff firsthand. And you know, and being in the industry, you know, as long as I have, like I've had the you know, been afforded the opportunity to visit, you know, some beautiful small farms, you know, Sonoma Hills Farm, you know, outside of Petaluma. You go there and you see outdoor plants growing in hues that you've just never seen before in a jar. You know, bright pinks and magentas that are just so vibrant. It's just like this literally looks like it's from Pandora. You know? Yeah. So for me, I love home grow because what it does is you don't start home growing and then become one of the and then stay the consumer who walks into a dispensary and says, give me the highest THC per dollar. Once you start home growing, you start to understand, okay, freshness is important, terpene profiles are important, genetics are important, brands who can produce consistent quality are important. Indoor versus outdoor, you know, making your selections there and, you know, finding the best medicine for you becomes a hell of a lot easier when you understand the plant inside and out and what it needs.
And you made a good point because I was thinking to myself, okay, well, if I was in the industry and I own a retail store, what would be the best way to increase the people that work in our organizations, their relationship with the plant? Like
Yeah.
what better than growing the plant, understanding the science behind it, understand what you're looking for. And then now as a business owner, my conversations are different.
Oh yeah. Absolutely. I mean, you look at craft beer, like,
Yeah.
who's most hardcore about like finding new beers and waiting for 3 hours when Pliny the Younger releases, up in Russian River, the guys who homebrew, like, so I think in general, the more we can get education out there, the more we can destigmatize this, the more that we can show people that you don't need a multi-$1,000 setup with crazy lights. You can literally grab a solo cup. I always tell people this. You can put a solo cup above your sink. If it's got a little window in front, as you're just doing dishes, use your little sprayer hose to every once in a while, casually just give it a little squirt. You don't need to sit there, trim every little thing, and you're still going to get something that's smokable. I don't care if it's a little bonsai tree that yields a gram to an eighth. You're still going to get practice. You're still going to understand how to do this stuff, and it's still going to build that appreciation.
Yeah. And there's something about, it's true. There's something about growing what you consume, or a little bit of that,
Yeah.
that really helps a lot. Okay, so you're a Renaissance man. And I know that this is a large part of what you do professionally, but
Yeah.
there's so many other things that you're into.
There are. Yeah, I'm a man of many hobbies, and most of them pertain to cannabis. So, well, yeah, horror movies, music. Of course, the music comes up in a lot of my writing. I do the vinyl pairings, with a lot of the strain reviews and stuff that I do, a lot of the judging that I do. Always think the direct line between music and cannabis is just it's just it's crazy. I mean, it's something that can just really amplify not only the music, but just, the feelings, the sensations, that the plant can give you. So I think for me, writing has always been something I've been huge on. And I've really been able to kind of find my voice in these last couple of years, writing for High Magazine with my column every release. Of course, High Times as well, Respect My Region, Buddhist. I mean, I've done like 75 Buddhist reviews now. And each one of them is, 5,000 words plus. So, it's been a beautiful thing. I'm huge on the policy side. I like to teach, since I have a background in investment, in fundraising, and venture, and all this jazz. I like to teach founders, especially social equity founders, how this game works. Teach people how to build a proper pitch deck if that's what they're looking for. A lot of hands holding for anybody looking to jump into this space. I'm one of those guys who gets dubbed a super connector. And that's just the beauty of being out there, being social. Is I've assembled a really large network where, if somebody's like, hey, I'm looking for a manufacturer in this state, hey, I'm looking for payroll down, I have 5 intros for them, And I think for me, that's something that I, was kind of my mission in coming to this industry, was to be somebody, that is that well-rounded, because I have such a deep passion for the space, and I find that most of the people I really attract, most to in the space, my best friends, all kind of take a similar mindset to this, which is we are so early. This is like being ground floor of beer, back in, right after the Prohibition. So, now's the time more than ever is to become well-rounded, because these opportunities won't be around forever. And more importantly, now's the time to pay it forward. If somebody's helped you along the way with a little bit of guidance, saved you from going down the wrong direction for months, an intro that really paid off, just try to replicate that. I make an intro. I don't care if you give me something back. Hey, here's my address if you want to send me a nice, an eighth or a bottle of booze. I don't care. But mostly, people, I want them empowered to just say, fuck, like, let me give this back to someone else. Let me find someone else who's coming up and see if I can help them out.
With your background and what you know today, if you were
Yep.
looking to get into the industry, right, in 2026, what state and what lane would you pick?
Ooh, tough question. What state and what lane? For me, there's a reason I live here in LA. I was in San Francisco for 10 years, and at the end of the day, being closer to the Emerald Triangle, I think was incredible. It affords you just so many opportunities you don't get down here as often in SoCal. That said, Santa Barbara, that area has a lot of beautiful outdoor. But, I always say if you're serious about cannabis, and you really want to make a career out of it, there is no better place to build that than Los Angeles. I know that we have our issues with taxation. I know we have our issues with oversaturation. And I know we have our issues with just in general, this being a really tough city to afford, and to make work for you and your family. But I'll tell you, this is the epicenter of innovation. I don't care what side of the industry you're on. At some point, you got to come through California, Southern California, LA for a conference, an investor meeting, or just obviously to attend different events. But I'm just really big on this market just because you just see everybody down here: content creators, marketers, growers, brand, people who've built brands, asset light businesses where they don't hold licenses. So many of those founders I know are down here. I know that answer is just, it's crazy. It's an insane answer. I mean, the right answer is like, I want to be in a small market like, Connecticut, right as it's coming to market so I can dominate. But for me, this is the ultimate proving ground. If you can make it here, you're going to make a ton of different connections. And more than anything, it's going to help you decide really quickly if cannabis is what you're looking for the rest of your career.
That is so interesting.
Pressure cooker. Yeah.
It's because it's true. The normal, I ask a lot of people this.
Yeah.
And what you say is so true because you would learn a lot in LA. You would learn a lot from other people. And what they say is once they legalize cannabis, California bud is pretty much going to take over the country.
There is a real strong opportunity here for especially Emerald Triangle, NorCal, to be the Chateauneuf de Pop, the wine, the different, Avignon, the Rhone region, I guess is the best one-to-one, of cannabis. And I think that we're going to see Santa Barbara County and stuff kind of take a similar foot. A lot of the Central Valley, up by Shasta and stuff. I think you're going to start to have these distinct regions, and people understand that proximity to, not only different valleys and different warm and cool air pockets, but of course, the salt from the sea air coming in creates, cannabis that does have different tasting notes, has different effects. I'm a big outdoor guy. At the end of the day, when you grow something outside, it's been forced to harden, against the elements. It's been forced to build up different resin that ultimately creates, in many cases, a tastier, more cannabinoid-rich plant. So for me, I think SoCal and California in general is definitely, like I said earlier, a pressure cooker. But the beauty is, if cannabis doesn't end up working out for you, every other industry is here. You can go into entertainment, you can go into biotech, you can go into crypto, whatever. So.
It's so true. If you were starting a brand in California,
yeah,
what would be your first 5 moves? Who would you meet first? What would you learn first? What are their pillars that...
5 moves. I feel like I need pen and paper to write out 5 moves. But my first one, everything starts with the team. Y Combinator, I always use this anecdote, the Startup Accelerator. Every single cohort, the maximum number of startups they'll allow in with a solo founder is 1. So you have cohorts with dozens of companies, in some cases hundreds of companies, and there's a reason for that, because misery loves company. And building a startup is really hard. And if you have someone that you can commiserate with, you can bounce ideas off of, you can hold each other in check, you can kind of have that sanity, it really does make or break, I think, the startup founder experience. So for me, I know my skill set, it's very strong in business development, partnerships, fundraising, marketing, a lot of that side. But, I know that if I'm building a beautiful product, I would definitely need somebody with deep cultivation experience. Not me, who grows a lot on my balcony and thinks he knows what he's doing, but people who've spent, 30, 40-year careers, specifically in the case of what I would bring to market, working with old school genetics. So that would be if I was making a play, if I was to leave ILGM, I would still stay very much in this space and just try to build a brand around, seeds from 70s, 80s, 90s. Think about pre-Afghan invasion or pre-Russian invasion of Afghanistan, Afghan beans from back in the day. I mean, these are stuff that have a real story behind them. I mean, go into a wine tasting room, they're going to spend half an hour to an hour with you talking not only about terroir, not only about the grapes being used, but going just deeper, into the science behind it and what makes it special. Age statements exist in wine, in Scotch. Oh, this is 15 years old. This is from 1986. Where is that in wheat? Yeah. A lot of the times we know something is from a certain year. I think imagine how cool it would be to smoke smoke a cultivar that is like from your birth year. I was born in 19. People a lot of times like to celebrate the holidays. I'm gonna get a 1989 bottle of Dom. To really just ring in the new year. Get a 1989. Jamaican landrace. For me, that's something that really excites me. So I think we've only scratched the surface of what's possible when it comes to like true craft and old school. So first thing is building the team. For me, that's finding that cultivator. Second thing is definitely setting up all of the nuts and bolts. You can't run a company that doesn't have in this case, I'd probably go with an outsourced CFO, somebody to help out with HR and payroll. Definitely, of course, we're selling products, so payment processing, 3PL, D2C, whatever's necessary there, distro partners, and of course, starting those retail relationships. So yeah, building my tech stack and service provider stack is number 2. Number 3, I'd say PR, PR and really amplifying my message. If I'm trying to do something disruptive that's changing status quo, trying to tell people why they should, be willing to shell out for old school beans, then yeah, I'm going to have to change the narrative a little bit that when you smoke this, it's going to be night and day different than a hybrid mutt that's been, just been bred amongst itself for decades. This is the true essence, the true landrace or whatever it is, the true, skunk one. So I'd say, so for 3, PR. Number 4, I'd probably say, just coordinating events to get the word out, get people tasting what I'm putting to market, showcasing in an innovative new way, not just trying to get a booth at Hall of Flowers. Not that there's anything wrong with Hall of Flowers. I'm a huge fan of that event, but, doing something that breaks the mold a little bit, that shows that this isn't just another premium company. This is something that has an X factor that you have not tried yet, and, with that, you can do billboards and stuff like that. That's popular in LA. But the last thing I would probably say, number 5, it's a tough one here, but, it's really just, and it probably should come a lot earlier, but I'm just thinking of it right now, is building a long-term plan. You can't go into building a cannabis company or any company just flying by the seat of your pants. This is not Field of Dreams. If you build it, they will not just come. You need to create a strategy for user acquisition, for what your 1 year looks like, 5 years looks like, 10 years looks like, your potential exit strategy. You got to think through everything that can go right and go wrong if you want to, to bulletproof your idea. And with that comes socializing your idea, talking to as many people about it as possible. I tell every startup founder, pitch your Uber driver. A lot of times people get super in their head. They're so wrapped up in industry jargon, they don't, or they're too busy pitching friends and family who are going to say, awesome, every single time. No. Pitch people who've never met you before, randos in bars who don't know the first thing about your industry, and look and see how it resonates with them. When you talk about different elements of your project, watch their face. See that's interesting. Watch where they start looking around. They start to tune out a little bit. They're no longer interested in what you're saying. Look at what captures their attention again and lean into that. So those are my 5 things.
That's amazing advice, because oftentimes if you're pitching your friends, I always tell people, if you're pitching within your immediate circle, you have to break the barrier and start seeing whether or not they're going to take their wallets out. Because it's really easy. It's easy to say, I love it. They want to be supportive. But when there's money on the line, that's when you know whether or not you're going to fail or not.
True. And pitching your friends really only works is if so I ran a startup accelerator for 4 or 5 years, and I pivoted into cannabis. And the most beautiful thing about that is even after the cohort ended, the program ended, you would see the little small groups we would make of cohort founders still meeting to kind of hold each other accountable, to practice pitching against each other. And yes, they're already in each other's little group, but what they're doing in having that recurring meeting is you can see how the pitch evolves. All the niceties and stuff get out of the way after the first one. And on the second one, it's, okay, you know what? You could have done that a little bit faster, or you lingered too long on this. You start to get to see the pitch evolve over time. In critiquing other people's pitches helps your pitch become a lot better too. You start to realize, oh shit, I'm making that same mistake. I'm speaking way too fast. So, that's definitely something I recommend.
You mentioned your top 5 things, and in the back of my head, I'm thinking to myself, exactly what you've mentioned. This is a pitch deck that you're talking about. What you need, why are you different, what's your TAM, what's your angle, and if you're going the PR route, if your angle is we have ancient strains, that sounds so cool.
Yeah. It does, and there's a lot of people working on bringing, this has been my rallying cry for, I want to say, the past, 5-10 years. But I've been so happy to see that large brands are starting to take an appreciation for old school seriously. One of my favorites to shout out, CBX launched their Air Bloom line, where you have Master Kush. This stuff isn't quite, 30, 40-year-old, but it's still teaching people that there is, so much merit, to old school. And if you follow, the work of like Kevin Jodrey, you can see somebody who's traveling to these countries firsthand, Pakistan, and bringing back beans, and showing people, how to grow these in ways that just, it isn't just the same one-size-fits-all growing technique. You really have to adopt a different playbook for a lot of this really rare old school stuff. But one of my other companies I love shouting out, Aero. These guys have stuff that are 18-week strains, like stuff that just shouldn't be viable in a market that just prizes how much can we churn out at the fastest rate. No, this is stuff that takes an insane amount of time, an insane amount of care. But ultimately, I think it's worth it. When you can have a Nigerian haze, an original haze, you can have a pre-98 Bubba, or a Pearls, that, is just, it'll take the Pepsi challenge with anything else out there. So I think we are starting to see the pendulum swing the other direction. My favorite signal is you go to an event that's all cultivators, and every single one on that panel is going to be like, I hate growing Z. I hate growing biscotti. I'm so sick of doing this. But at the end of the day, this is what the customer needs. What I prefer to be growing is what I have in my, my little head stash right back here, the Laotian landrace that I smoke with my friends. I know that I can't really sell that, broadly in market. But if I had my pick of the litter, that's what I would be moving forward with, So yeah, brands who aren't afraid to innovate, especially leveraging old school, go to the top of my list.
So Aero, tell me a little bit. Yeah, tell me a little bit more of this company and why did you get involved in this company?
Oh, I'm not involved with these guys. They're just like Air Bloom. They're ones I just like to shout out good behavior, or things that I think are really damn cool. I met him at Hall of Flowers. I had heard from other buddists, including Kevin Jodrey, that these guys are the real deal. And when I got up to a recent Hall of Flowers 2 or 3 years ago, I just beelined to their booth. And I was like, I want to meet these guys. I want to see what funk they've brought. And, first thing I ripped into after leaving that was my Aero. And so I think it's tough. A lot of these guys struggle to find retailers who understand their value prop, who understand what they're putting on the shelf is going to be night and day different than other stuff that's on there. But, it takes that education. That's why I mentioned PR, because until these retailers have people coming in saying, got any old school, got any Aero, got any Pearls, they're not going to feel inclined to, they're going to keep saying, okay, cool, whose stuff can I get the cheapest? Who's going to sell the most of? Let's rinse and repeat just and double click on what's already working,
Yeah.
So
the market is, and I'm hoping that there is a shift and you can probably shed light to this. Existing market, emerging markets that have old school consumers, because what I see is a lot of people come in and they just want the highest THC, right? Like, just give me the highest THC, and there's this calculator, lowest price, and there's a denominator there, and it's like the most THC divided by the dollars. Ugh. That's got to change. But how can we change that?
I think what I was, just being active and changing the narrative, like, I probably tune in, ignoring and am on different subreddits. And when I see people being like, this is 35%, is this legit? I'm the guy in the comments being like, stop looking at THC% as an indication of how high and how enjoyable this is going to be. You need to look at freshness, genetics, terpenes, find what works for you. Don't just lean into a damn number. What I find is always super effective is the obvious Everclear comparison. Are you going to walk into a liquor store and buy a bottle of Everclear? No, like, we're not making jungle juice in college, people. Like, we are here to find something that, especially, regardless of age, I think over time, just you still start to develop with any hobby, a taste for nuance, a taste for, for different terpene profiles. And, I think it's important that, that we're able to have a market that's able to fulfill that demand.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Where do you see, and are you involved in different markets? Where do you see the industry heading in, say, California compared to, the rest of the country?
I am. So ILGM ships to all 50 states as of today. We'll see what happens, obviously next November, but under the Farm Bill, of course, we have that luxury. So for us, my grow clubs, we're springing those up in Virginia, Seattle, Portland, Chicago, New York, LA, San Diego and Missouri, and a couple of these others are now in the cards, of course, the Bay Area. So for me, my day-to-day involves talking to consumers throughout the country. Of course, a lot of my other work, in manufacturing and whatnot has pertained to other markets, people bringing beverages, into Massachusetts, for instance, or, heavily focusing on the Colorado market. And I think in general, every market is going to have their own nuances and their own battles to fight. But for me, I think everybody looks over at the adjacent state and says the grass is greener and these guys are having a better go of it than I am. But, I think it's just going out there and sharing these stories. If you're an operator building something, document it. Why? Because A, it's going to help people develop a personal connection with your brand, but also, people on social media and stuff, can start to kind of watch this journey, and it can help other founders, who are trying to figure out how to build their own stuff. Mm-hmm. And they may not be competitive. They might be complementary. They might be a future collab for you. That's one thing about cannabis is you never know who's going to end up being a partner, down the road, because this is such a small industry. So a little bit of knowledge in every market can go a long way.
You hit the nail on the head.
Just sitting there and just every time they try something, they record something for social. Maybe they just type something out, and they build this identity as somebody who reviews products out of genuine passion. Not because there's a there for them. There's no secret incentive of I'm trying to shill for this company I'm working with. It's no, someone sent me this. This was terrible. This is why it was terrible. Being able to to be honest and be genuine, be authentic, isn't going to be around forever. as screwed up as that is to say, but you do look at other industries, like big beer and spirits, and you see how much of a game that is, and how the role of the board, the investors, all the different, if you're public, all the different stakeholders, the retail investors shape your day to day. Right now, you can kind of own your own future.
Where do you see, and hopefully we reclass to Schedule 3 this year, knock on wood, but I have so many questions about this, more questions than answers, right?
Sure. About Schedule 3?
And what are your thoughts on what actually this means for the industry?
Yeah. Oh, I don't want to pull any punches here, but
aside from the obvious, obviously, we're 280E. Okay, fine.
280E.
Okay, that's
fantastic.
Okay.
Who's going to benefit most from that? The largest of the large MSOs with huge teams of accountants and lawyers and everything to make sure that they can continue to speed run towards being the future AB InBevs of the cannabis industry. Congratulations, guys, you've done it. The impact of lobbying is not lost on me. I guess you just need to drop $1 million and go to Mar-a-Lago and hang out for a little while, and that can start working in your favor. But I'll tell you, brother, Schedule 3, I hope to God actually does bring through the promise of additional research on this matter, actually opening the doors for consumer trials. The work, of course, it's been started in Israel, with Dr. Raphael, and, has been crazy around the endocannabinoid system, around the entourage effect. I want American scientists digging into the entourage effect, digging into the impact of terpenes on your high. starting to disprove some of the bunk science that's out there. So for me, the medical research side, super, super appealing. But yeah, I think when it comes to, the real day-to-day, for most small brands, retailers, XYZ, it's going to be pretty much the status quo. What this is going to do, and I'm already seeing it happen, is kind of hyper accelerate, a lot of the consolidation that's happening in the space. There certainly are, even within just specifically in hemp or specifically in genetics, you have a lot of these roll-ups happening where companies that are distressed are saying, look, there's strength in numbers here. Let's combine forces. Let's make ourselves someone who can, maybe challenge one of these largest of the large operators. I don't have anything against the MSOs. I think my biggest thing is unless they're lobbying against home grow, you lose me when you do that. And I think you probably lose the consumers too as they start to get a little bit more knowledgeable, because that's such a crappy thing to do. But I will say the opportunity is with them to start kind of leading the charge for making cannabis, much more than, simply transactional. When you have all that money, you can take risks and you can start to focus on the power of the plant. You can focus on changing education and getting people away from highest THC per dollar. The power is yours and yours alone, giant operators. The rest of us are going to do our best to change the narrative, but you're the ones who can actually change something, especially with the change to Schedule 3. Should give you a lot more money and a lot more latitude to go out there and right some of these wrongs, especially for social equity founders that they may have used and abused on their way up. So
I hope that the increase in research gives us the ability to, hopefully there's regulations around extracting, because I know that right now in the hemp industry, just talking to people that are in it, it's just the extraction of the cannabinoids could be very loose in terms of, you kind of have to make sure that you're buying the right stuff and you consume the right stuff. It's a wild west over there. But I've always wondered, okay, so maybe big companies are going to come in, big industry is going to come in, and they extract, and there's good, there's cannabinoids that are really helpful. THCV, for example. I would love for that to be mainstream, right? Yeah. And if you can extract that and have it beneficial, you can probably ship that across state lines.
We'll see.
Is that you know what I mean? Does that open the door for actual...
I mean, how much enforcement is even happening right now when it comes to shipping across state lines?
That's true.
I mean, we're a country that's invading other countries right now. I don't think that it's top of mind for any regulator to be focused on interstate commerce. I think it is a little bit of the Wild West, and we've seen that fuel the growth of some of the largest players in the space who aren't afraid to ship beyond what is compliant. It's the sad reality, but this is the same rallying cry that the Elliot Lewises of Catalyst are banging this drum on a daily basis, because frankly we've created a situation in which the largest of the large have insulated themselves very nicely, and they're able to do things that the smallest of the small, it can be make or break. So.
Yeah, no, it can be, and I probably think about this too much. In terms of, this is great, but there's so many questions. There's just so many effing questions that I have that I don't know. Yeah, we operate in a state of uncertainty, I guess, and that's the norm.
To say the least, yeah. I think that's what can make this industry so challenging, especially for somebody who's new to it. I couldn't even imagine coming from commercial real estate, and being this is going to be my normal day to day. But in cannabis, you're always flying by the seat of your pants. Someone's always dropping a bomb on you. If it's, hey, we're going to, repeal the farm bill and stop all intoxicating hemp, or we're going to switch to Schedule 3, or there's going to be an additional 10% tax at a city level that was just decided to be levied, or that tax has been repealed. You're always kind of forced to to juke and kind of dodge and think on your feet, think on the fly, in ways that, in more traditional industries, it's just a very copy and paste day to day. For most roles in cannabis, I'd say outside of, certain ones like, manufacturing, it's always going to be new stuff being thrown at you.
Mm-hmm. I want to ask you this, because I'm sure that everybody listening is wondering, you're a part of a lot of companies, for example.
Sure.
What is your criteria, and what do you look for in a business to spend your time in and to invest in?
Gotcha. I mean, for me, ILGM and, everything we're building on the Grow Club side is the overwhelming majority of my effort, but I do think it's really important to have some side hustles, for lack of a better term, in this industry, just because, like I said earlier, these opportunities aren't going to be around forever. And my biggest criteria is, unsurprisingly, just aligning with the vision and the values of those who I'm working with. I think it's extremely telling when you have people that are just obsessed with profiting on the green rush. You see, and I've seen this firsthand, how quickly these people are to cut ties and run the second things get challenging. I want to work with people who are lifers. I want to work with people who understand the significance of this opportunity and the impact it has on changing lives of others. I don't know what other industry outside of maybe becoming a doctor, allows you to heal, as many people. Yes, yoga, wellness, transcendental meditation, there's a lot of beautiful stuff out there, but the multiplier effect of a little bit of your effort making someone's day a little bit brighter, making someone feel a little bit connected towards someone else, making, somebody who previously they considered an enemy. I mean, cannabis has just such a healing potential. And if you're somebody who gets that and lives that and breathes that, I want to work with you. If you're somebody who's, wants to sit back and, just reap the rewards, don't talk to me. Yeah. I'll give you some advice, and that advice is going to be you need to start jumping in and getting your hands dirty and understanding why this is significant.
Do you think that there's a huge miss right in the industry now to lean into health? Because for me, I think about the cannabis industry as three things. One, recreational, right? The recreational side, the medical side. But there's the health and wellness side.
Yeah.
And the health and wellness industry in general is such a big industry. It's 3-4 times bigger than the cannabis industry as a whole. And I am a health consumer of the cannabis industry. Yeah. I.e., I don't consume really recreationally to escape reality. It's more to enhance my experiences. So to think about business, to clean, to work out, all of those things, right? Yeah. And I think there's a huge miss in marketing to people like myself.
There is. Yeah, I think that's why I think Grow Club's cool, is because when you look at what health and wellness is, it can be events, it can be teaching people a new skill, getting people's hands back into soil. That to me is the essence of health and wellness. But I think, we see a lot of products, like you mentioned THCV earlier. Not only I like to call out, like I said, people who are killing it. Autumn Brands has a lot of high THCV flower. They, out of Santa Barbara, but we're even seeing, I think, even the guys from Heavy Hitters, which are a part of Mammoth, a much larger company. They have a thing of tablets that are all THCV, for on the go, for people who aren't used to smoking, don't want to smoke. So I think in general, these categories need more amplification. I think especially they are the tip of the spear for breaking the stigma amongst, I'd say, people who are a little bit older. If you're looking at taking a bunch of pills, to help with focus, memory, whatever, and then somebody is recommending, a suite of herbal solutions, I mean, you got to start considering the herbal solutions. And I say that from somebody where my parents, they don't smoke. They started growing. I sipped them some seeds, and they're like, yeah, we'll try it. They're going to ship it to my cousin or something. But my wife's family, they're no strangers to imbibing. I mean, we go to Thanksgiving, and you got the 90-year-old grandma popping a gummy, every single one of the aunts popping gummies, every one of the kids, smoking outside. So we've really normalized our relationship with it. But what I do notice is, that's far from the norm. But those health and wellness products are the more appropriate gateway, along with old school, because I think people miss the experience of smoking some lower THC, but it's still going to knock your socks off. It's going to leave you feeling really uplifted and not anxious or paranoid. Those are the effects that health and wellness needs to focus on. Well, no anxiety, no paranoia, because that's what's holding so many people back from getting back into cannabis. They have one bad experience, and then that's who I am now. I can't even go into a dispensary. It just freaks me out. It's just too much. I can't smoke. I can't take a hit. Or if I can take a hit, it needs to be at home by myself or with my partner. But yeah, it's definitely, we've been in a situation where the focus on everybody getting as stoned as possible has alienated a lot of the more casual lifestyle, potential customers here. So I think, look, with Martha and Montel and a lot of these celebrities and stuff who are in the space, they can, especially if their audience is a little bit more aligned, I think we will start to see that stigma get lifted. I think, people shit on celebrity brands too often, but I think they do a lot of good for being able to educate their audiences on stuff that they would never hear about otherwise.
Yeah, I hope so. Because the market of people that actually, the recreational, I want the highest TC, that's a very small sliver of the population. There's not a lot of people out there that's looking to bomb themselves every day, very small. But for the regular person like me, I like my daytime highs. I like just a little bit, just to give me that kick of energy.
Yeah, I get it, brother. I'm after work and then all weekends, I'm definitely using cannabis, and it's helped me with my depression and anxiety my entire life. It's allowed me to move off of Prozac and all that crap I took 15, 20 years ago and left me feeling like a complete zombie. So I think everyone just has to develop their own relationship with the plant, and a lot of that comes down to am I consuming at a time or in a setting that's conducive to me enjoying this? And and dosage absolutely factors in. So a little hit in the morning can make someone's day just so much more optimistic, while others, it's going to make them feel anxious. If they're on a call with somebody who isn't on that same wavelength, that can bug them out and keep them from wanting to revisit the plant. So I think what it comes down to is always having people in your corner who know more than you do, who can sit with you and who can teach you this stuff. And the internet is so good for that. Events are so good for that. But I think more than anything, people need to stop being afraid to just going out there and asking for that help if they see somebody who has a beautiful relationship with the plant.
Jake, before I let you go, what are some of upcoming events that you guys are hosting?
Great question. So we are officially back in action on the 17th of January. So that's next Saturday. We are doing our first ever Portland Grow Club. So very excited to be doing that at the Gray area. We should have a ton of people there, to say the least. We'll be giving out seeds, fabric pots to get people start growing today. And of course, all of the swag and stuff from our sponsors, King Solomon Nutrients, ViviCure, Sea Vaults, humidity control packs, E10 Labs vapes. There's a bunch of stuff up there. Of course, we are going to hit February with the ground running. We got two kind of pre-Valentine's Day edition, celebrating the love of the plants, coming at you on February 12th. We're going to do our LA event at the Artistry in WeHo. We're going to be doing our first Seattle event on that exact same day. So the 12th of February, we're going to be moving a couple different events forward. And then Virginia, our next one we've just locked in Lynchburg for the 21st of February. That one's a Saturday. So we should have New York City locked, I'd say, by the end of this week. It's probably going to be that third week of February as well. And then there's a couple others in the hopper that I'll be excited to talk about that we're launching soon. But you know me, I'm at a lot of different events, locally and around the LA area and beyond. Throwing your own events is great, but to be a good steward of the community, I think it's always important to support the events of others who are out there just doing things right, bringing people together in a healthy way.
Love it. Where can our listeners find you?
So ILGM.com, I love growing marijuana. We're really easy to find. I'm comically easy to find on email at jake@ilgm.com. My personal, if you have a startup or something else, you want to talk about, it's just Kuczeruk@gmail. That's my last name. I'm at Kuczeruk on every platform, Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook. I have the handle. So yeah, it's the beautiful thing of having no one with my last name in this country. But I'm easy to find, but ILGM, you can find Grow Club. We even have a separate Instagram account for it. I'm constantly sharing about this stuff. But in general, check out our seeds. We're always running deals. And more than anything, I'm proud of the fact that we have a germination guarantee. If your beans don't pop, we'll replace them in a heartbeat. And of course, if you make friends with me, you make friends with our local leaders, we'll just hook you up with freebies and stuff whenever you ask. So,
oh, that's beautiful. That's the industry. I love this industry.
Well, it should be.
I love this industry.
Yeah.
Jake, thank you so much for joining me today.
I really am honored to be a part of this. Thank you for having me on today. Just really, really happy to be part of something. You're doing a lot of good for this industry and telling these stories. If I was a founder, checking out this podcast is, one of the first things I think you can do to set yourself in the right direction. So hats off, brother. And hey, I'm always game to chat.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for listening to the KayaCast podcast. We hope you enjoyed the show. Don't forget to subscribe to our podcast in your favorite podcast app or visit our website to access the full archive of episodes from the show.